Welcome to Looking Within, a podcast for the spiritual explorer in each of us. I'm Julie. I love to explore the inner life using contemplative practices, and I love to help others to do the same. In our time together, I hope you gain a sense of hope, meaning, joy, and love. Keep in mind, today I'll be speaking from my own perspective as a Christian spiritual explorer. If you resonate with another way of experiencing the divine, that's just fine. Feel free to use the spiritual perspective you are most comfortable with in our practice today. Now, let's begin. Last week, we began a two-part series looking at a few examples of ways that we can experience God as we contemplatively move through our daily lives. This way of living, this ability to see God's presence and activity in our lives with increasing frequency, is the foundation of our podcast. Our times together each week are designed to give practical ways to help sharpen up our contemplative lens, helping us to see and experience God in increasingly real and expanding ways. If you find your roots in Christianity, a contemplative approach to your daily life can radically deepen your relationship with God. Little by little, this relationship will develop and move beyond head information or merely beliefs about God to developing eyes and hearts that will open more and more through spotting direct experiences of God. It's a very exciting thing. Every object or event, every chance encounter or image that comes to mind may become a type of metaphor filled with meaning or remind us of something about God or life or our spiritual journey. Anything can lead to direct experiences of God. God can increasingly become our very breath, filling our inner essence, just a natural part of each day, of each moment, when our eyes and hearts open to this kind of divine presence. Last week, I shared how a Bible verse, when using one's imagination to picture the scene and the feelings created by a story or verse, can make God's presence come alive and be very real. Just a side note, please know that poetry, prose, visual art, or nature can create these encounters with God as well. Today, I have a scenario from my daily life to share with you as an illustration of how our life is the palette from which this picture and sense of God can be developed. Our life truly is our spiritual practice. A few days ago, I took a walk outside, taking a break from some work I was doing in our house. As I mentioned in last week's podcast, I was feeling just a bit down that day and thought the sun and fresh air would help me feel a bit better. It was a beautiful August day out. As I'm always reminding you, I thought it might be best to open up my own eyes and heart to spot God walking with me on that day. As I got into the spirit of this, I began to see things on my walk that had meaning for me, that reassured me or comforted me, or just plain cheered me up a bit. For example, I saw a monarch butterfly fluttering along near me for a few moments. That reminded me of new life. Later, I passed a construction worker in a school parking lot. He was loading up some heavy machinery onto a trailer from a recent project. As I walked near him, he called out a greeting and made a comment about the weather. That was friendly of him. I was reminded there are lots of really nice people around. Further on, I spotted the unique flight pattern of a goldfinch flitting through a yard. Goldfinches always remind me of my mom, who had a thistle seed feeder for the finches as we were growing up. She loved seeing them in our yard. Thinking of my mom, now passed, made me smile. And to complete the walk, I passed by a little waterway where the water bubbles over rocks in a few places. I love that sound. It's very soothing and enlivening for me and carries a sense of life for me when I hear it. And finally, yet another monarch butterfly fluttered around me for a few paces as I neared our house. Perhaps it was the same butterfly, reminding me again of new life. The whole walk contained a sense of life, of connection, a sense of God's wholeness. It lifted my spirits, and the exercise didn't do me any harm either. My point in describing my walk to you is to remind you that all of the little and big things that happen to us throughout a typical day can serve as markers and reminders of God's presence. Our encounters with nature, people, and animals, with everything, can be filled with reminders that God is with us, that God deeply and compassionately loves and cares about us. Sometimes these are called God sightings. It's a great description of the little and not so little ways that we experience God each day. Let's think about this as we have a few quiet, contemplative minutes together. In this quiet space and time, I'd invite you to gently close your eyes. I'll sound the Tibetan singing bowl, which will call you to look within. As you're listening to the bowl's reverberations, take 3 deep breaths. Then let your breathing return to normal whenever you'd like. Hear the sound of the bowl now. Let it center you. Let it remind you that God is here with you. I'd invite you to think back over the past few days of your life, or maybe the past week. Can you think of any events, time with people or pets or animals, time in prayer, anything in nature that you saw or experienced, or anything that you read or watched that created a sense of God being very close to you? Or perhaps there's a very memorable time from your past that stands out as an instance of having a strong awareness that God was very close to you. Ponder whatever comes to mind, this God sighting. Remember how it felt and how much it meant to you to experience how very real God was in your life. I'll be back with you in about 3 minutes. I'd invite you now to take a few deep breaths in and out, in and out. Let these breaths fill you with strength and energy. Hear me sound the Tibetan singing bowl, and as the sound of the bowl reverberates and slowly dies away, you can gently open your eyes, remaining still for a moment longer. Today we've considered part 2 of a 2-part series on what it looks like to contemplatively experience God's presence and activity in our lives. Sometimes we sense God's presence from passages from the Bible, from prose or poetry that is meaningful to us, or from experiences or things that we sense when we're out in nature. Or sometimes it's the little things in a day where we spot subtle nudges or messages from God that God is right there with us, that all will be well despite outward appearances. In the coming days, be alert, be present to more and more moments of your daily life and routines, or to things that you feel led to read or look at or explore. Within these encounters with God, you'll find comfort, direction, encouragement, and a first-hand encounter with the living God. Thank you for making time for your inner self today. Whatever you've discovered and experienced, carry that with you in the coming days. You can find more episodes at our website, gloria-dei, that's DEI.com/lookingwithinpodcast, or subscribe through your favorite podcast app. We'll see you next time.